Two teams with designs on the postseason square off tonight in St. Louis as the Phillies and Cliff Lee invade Busch Stadium to clash with the Cardinals and their dangerous lineup. On any other team, he'd be the ace, but coveted free agent Cliff Lee gave up that role when he signed with the Phillies in the offseason to help form a dominant rotation. Tonight, the former Cy Young winner faces a tough challenge when he takes the hill against St. Louis's potent lineup. The Cardinals' offense is loaded with weapons. Lance Berkman is in the midst of a terrific resurgence and is second in the National League in runs batted in. Sweet swinging Matt Holliday leads the majors with a lofty .379 batting average. And if Albert Pujols starts hitting like he always has, then the National League better beware. Outstanding pitching and big bats collide next. Welcome everybody to ESPN's Monday Night Baseball from St. Louis on a beautiful night with the temperature in the low 60s and a nice crowd filing in to watch the Phillies and the Cardinals in the opener of a two-game series. Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Sean McDonough along with Rick Sutcliffe and Aaron Boone. Delighted to have you with us as we get a look at the team that's been the best offensive club in the major league so far this season, the St. Louis Cardinals, going up against that outstanding Philadelphia Phillies pitching staff. And the starter tonight for Philadelphia is Cliff Lee.
Well, a great pitcher, no question about that, Sean. We've seen him dominate in the postseason, but when you take a closer look at him, he really doesn't have terrific stuff. It has always been his location that has been the key. That fastball's not going to remind you of Sandy Koufax. Tom Glavine wouldn't have wanted that changeup. The cutter is not Mariano Rivera. And you take a look at the curveball, the Philadelphia Philly fans are not going to think of that as Steve Carlton's curveball, but it's a combination of all four, Sean, with that location that really makes him special.
And tonight he'll be taking on that St. Louis club that is scoring runs at a rapid rate, led by Matt Holliday and Lance Berkman. They are 1-2 right now in the National League in batting average. They are in the top three, both of them in on-base percentage and slugging, and both Holliday and Berkman in the top 6 in the National League in runs batted in. And Aaron, the Cardinals 22-19 for the season, despite the fact that Albert Pujols is off to a slow start. He's had a lot of help.
Yeah, Sean, if you are a St. Louis Cardinal fan, there is a lot of reason to feel optimistic so far. Look, through the first month and a half of the season, nothing has gone according to the script. They got swept over the weekend by the Cincinnati Reds, their rival in the division, and their best player, the best player in the game, Albert Pujols, is off to the worst start of his career, yet they sit here on May 16th just in a game and a half out of first place. As for Pujols, look, at 31 years old and in the prime of his career, it is a matter of when, not if he gets it going. And when he does, this offense that has been very good so far has the potential to be great.
And Pujols tonight will be starting at third base. Let's send you down onto the field and welcome in Tim Kurkjian.
Thank you, Sean. Tony La Russa will be back in the dugout tonight after missing 6 games with the shingles. He told me he's still in some pain, but he's feeling much, much better. He told me while he was out, he called interim manager Joe Patini and pitching coach Dave Duncan on the phone before every game to talk about the lineup and the pitching, but he said after that, I left him alone. La Russa said he watched every game from his office here at Busch Stadium, and even though he slept an awful lot, he said he didn't miss a pitch. I asked him, what was it like watching your own team play on TV? And he said it was absolutely heartbreaking. Sean?
And Tony La Russa will have Jake Westbrook on the mound tonight. The veteran right-hander has scuffled so far this year, an ERA of 6.92. First pitch from St. Louis right after this. ESPN Monday Night Baseball is brought to you by Dodge. Dodge, never neutral, and by Sears Blue Lawn and Garden Crew. Compare all the ways Sears beats Home Depot and Lowe's for the right to be on your lawn. Homecoming for Ryan Howard, St. Louis native, back in his hometown, and great to see Tony La Russa back in that Cardinal uniform and on the field after missing the last 6 games, battling shingles, out there with the lineup card and greeting the umpiring crew. You know, he was in a lot of pain if he realized it was time to step away after battling shingles for weeks. Charlie Manuel, in his 7th season as manager of the Phillies, his team arrives in St. Louis, having lost their last 2 over the weekend in Atlanta. They haven't had a 3-game losing streak yet this season, and they hope to avoid it here tonight in St. Louis. Here's the starting lineup for the Philadelphia Phillies. They have struggled offensively through a lot of the year, just 10th in the National League in runs scored, but Ryan Howard is up to his usual act, leading the National League in runs batted in.
Yep, same old for Ryan Howard, and he loves coming to play in his hometown of St. Louis. His career against the Cardinals, .372 with 15 homers and a .738 slugging in 38 career games.
No Placido Polanco in their lineup tonight, just getting a day off. He's been their best hitter for average. Shane Victorino is out, nursing what they think is a minor injury, so Jake Westbrook will not have to face a couple of the key regulars in that Philadelphia lineup.
And that's certainly going to help. I talked to Cardinal pitching coach Dave Duncan before the game, and I said, how will we know if Jake Westbrook is going to be good or not? He said the key is for him to be aggressive early in the count. Well, you can see right there, he's not a strikeout pitcher. He relies on the ground ball. He relies on that defense. Way too many pitches per inning.
And the Cardinals have not played good defense. They've made 33 errors this season. Only Houston with 34 has committed more in the National League. Matt Holliday, John Jay, and Alan Craig, the outfield from left to right. In the middle of the infield, Ryan Terrios made 9 errors, leading National League shortstops with Nick Punto at second base. Albert Pujols is going to start a game at third base for the first time since 2002. He has played an inning and a third there this year with Lance Berkman across the diamond. And Yadier Molina, 3-time Gold Glove winner, is behind the plate. Albert Pujols took ground balls this afternoon. We were standing around the batting cage watching him do that and saying, wonder why he's taking ground balls at third. Well, now we know he's starting at that position for the first time since the NLCS in 2002.
And for what it's worth, I watched him take those ground balls. He looked very comfortable over there, very smooth. So I would think he can at least do an adequate job at the hot corner tonight.
Tony La Russa said he's a very good athlete with some key injuries. They've needed to move some folks around. He won another right-handed bat in the lineup tonight. Jake Westbrook's first pitch is up and away, and we're underway in St. Louis on a very pleasant night. 62 degrees at first pitch. This is going to be a cold night for this time of the year in this part of the country. A strike to Jimmy Rollins. Expected to get down to the high 30s here in the St. Louis area. Rollins was their number 3 hitter for the first part of the season, but struggled in that role. Moved there because they don't have Chase Utley. He's ordinarily been their leadoff hitter, but it didn't work out very well in the number 3 spot, so he's back at the top of the order.
Well, and Placido Polanco has been so good, especially with runners in scoring position.
Strike 3. Westbrook working very quickly. Needs 5 pitches to get a strikeout of Rollins to start the game.
I'm not real sure if Jimmy Rollins was ready to go here. You know exactly what you're going to get out of Westbrook. You're going to get that movement from left to right with the sinker. Was able to even the count up at 2-2 and then located the pitch to get the strikeout.
Wilson Valdez digs in.
I think Jimmy might have had a problem with the shadows. I mean, he was kind of laughing as he walked into the dugout.
It's an odd starting time here. 6 o'clock local time, just after 6. So the outfield, most of it is in the bright sunshine, and Westbrook's upper body is in the sun. His lower part is in the shade. He's off the mound quickly to field a bunt, and he throws Valdez out. Of course, Lance Berkman hasn't played much first base lately as well, because that's ordinarily where Pujols is.
I don't blame Philadelphia Phillies for trying to get Albert Pujols into the game. Let's test him right off the bat. Anybody that's able to bunt, let's try to push one in that direction. Couldn't quite get it there. Nice athletic play on the part of Westbrook.
The 33-year-old Georgia native ready to go to work to Raul Ibanez. It's a ball just inside. Ibanez got off to a very slow start. He's picked it up to 230. 3 homers and 16 runs batted in. Called strike from Jerry Davis, who's the home plate umpire tonight. And the crew chief of this umpiring crew down the right field line and hooking foul. 6 o'clock starts. A lot of people are still getting out of work and making their way over here to this very nice downtown ballpark.
Well, that's which means to me as a starting pitcher, that first time through the lineup, you better work real quick because you've got an advantage with the twilight and the shadows behind the pitcher.
And Westbrook he's working very quickly.
Yeah.
So will Lee.
And you talked about that aggressiveness. He's going right after these guys with that sinker ball, which has been his bread and butter throughout his career.
On the ground is second, and Nick Punto, whom Tony La Russa calls a Gold Glove caliber fielder in that infield. A 1-2-3 first for Jake Westbrook. And we're back at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. ESPN Monday Night Baseball. The Phillies and the Cardinals. The Phils went in order in the top of the first, and now Tony La Russa's lineup set to come up against Cliff Lee. Cardinals hitting a major league leading 288 as a team, thanks largely to Holiday and Berkman. They've scored a National League high 217 runs, and Yadier Molina, batting 7th and catching tonight, had a terrific season a year ago against the Phillies.
Yeah, the premier defensive catcher in Major League Baseball. He helps stabilize the bottom of that order. He gets a lot of big hits for the St. Louis Cardinals.
And they'll take their hacks against the 32-year-old native of Benton, Arkansas, left-hander Cliff Lee.
Phillies manager Charlie Manuel says that he is a Charger, the #1 strike throwing machine in all of baseball. Look at the percentage there of strikes. He will not disappoint you again tonight with that.
More than 9 strikeouts this year for every walk from Lee. And his first pitch right on cue is a strike to Ryan Theriot. Close, but a ball. 1-1 on the Cardinals shortstop, hitting .285 without a homer, 13 runs driven in. It's sharply up the middle and past the diving Jimmy Rollins, a base hit. Phillies have been the best fielding team in the National League. .990 team fielding percentage and a league low 15 errors in 39 games. Shane Victorino out of the lineup tonight. John Mayberry Jr. is in center field between Raul Ibanez and Ben Francisco. Jimmy Rollins, the 3-time Gold Glove winner at short with Pete Orr, who's playing second base tonight as Wilson Valdez has moved to third to give Placido Polanco a night of rest. Ryan Howard at first, and the outstanding catcher Carlos Ruiz behind the plate. A bunt dropped down, and John Jay's thrown out by Wilson Valdez. But Ryan Theriot's now in scoring position.
You know, Sean, just hearing you say that and talking about the lack of defense for the Cardinals, the great pitching of the Phillies, the terrific offense of St. Louis, you have to wonder if that defense, one way or another, might be the difference in this series.
Against this excellent pitching staff, Tony La Russa has Jay sacrificing in the first inning. Get Theriot in a scoring position for Albert Pujols. He takes the ball low. As Aaron mentioned, he's off to the worst start of his Hall of Fame career. .266. Hasn't homered in 20 games, 75 at bats.
Only 3 doubles on the year.
Showing signs of coming out of it. 0 for 4 yesterday in their loss in Cincinnati, but prior to that he had hit .417 in the previous 6 games.
He got drilled in his last at bat. Cordero hit him with a fastball. Ruffled some feathers in that Cardinal dugout. Some words were said.
Doesn't take much to ruffle feathers when the Reds and Cardinals get together. Pujols takes the ball low. He wasn't particularly bothered by it. He understood that in that game situation, 9th inning, the Cardinals were rallying back. Pujols was behind in the count 0-2.
And Albert said
Francisco
before
Cordero wasn't trying to hit him.
Well, and Cordero's one of his best friends, is what Albert told me before the game.
That's ripped to left, and it is caught by Ibanez. Terrio had to scamper back to second. The Cardinals wound up losing yesterday 9-7. There's Pujols getting hit on the wrist with an 0-2 pitch. He did have x-rays. They were negative. And when Cordero finished the game, just saw a shot a moment ago at Gerald Laird. It was Laird who apparently was giving him the most lip from the dugout. Dave Duncan, the pitching coach, also hollering out at Cordero after the game ended.
And look, anytime your star gets hit like that and hit up around the hands, you know, you take a little exception to it. But in that situation where Albert was the tying run behind in the count 0-2, Cordero's just trying to set up his next pitch. Definitely not trying to hit him in that situation, especially with Holiday and Berkman coming up as hot as they have been.
That's a great point. Right now, Albert Pujols is the guy you want to pitch to.
Because this man leads the majors in hitting. Matt Holliday having a tremendous season at .379.
Well, it's scary to think how good Holiday and Berkman have been when that's a situation in the first 10 years of Pujols' career. Man on second, first base open. Cliff Lee probably would have pitched a little carefully to Pujols in that situation.
Or maybe just put him on.
Right.
Yeah.
But they go right after him right now.
Strike at 92 miles per hour. A ball and 2 strikes on Holiday, the major league's leading hitter. And he's been outstanding with men in scoring position, leading the majors as well with a .463 batting average with runners in scoring position. Which is the case now with Terrio at second, 2 outs in a scoreless game in the first.
This is one strong dude. I made you, Sean, shake his hand this afternoon just to see what I was talking about.
You wanted Sean to get hurt, didn't you?
I thought that's what he said. Have you ever shaken the hand of Matt Holliday? I said, no, why? Is he going to hurt? When he comes walking toward you, he looks like the kind of guy give you that really tight squeeze handshake, but he didn't. It didn't hurt.
Yeah, just a giant paw.
And a very pleasant guy.
Yep.
Which is unusual for a friend of Aaron Boone, but
Hey, now.
payoff pitch to him, fouled away to the right.
All of the rumors about Coors Field being his greatest asset offensively have been put to rest, have they not?
They have. And I think even to some degree, the questions about him signing such a big contract long-term for a lot of dollars, some people raised an eyebrow at that. Well, he's put all that to rest as well.
Takes ball 4 high. Very rare walk, as we mentioned, issued by Cliff Lee. Is the 8th batter he's walked this season in 53 innings.
But you know what? Rare for Cliff to walk anybody, but not rare for him to walk Matt Holliday. Matt was telling me that he faced him before when he was with Oakland, and in 3 at-bats, Matt walked twice. Matt said, I couldn't believe that either.
Mentioned the amazing strikeout to walk ratio, 9.14 this year. That leads the National League. And now Lance Berkman was almost a man without a team in the offseason. Wound up here with St. Louis. And is right behind his teammate Holiday in the race for the National League batting crown. Leads the National League in OPS. 11 homers, is just 1 behind the league leader, Ryan Braun. And 34 runs batted in, 1 behind Ryan Howard for the league lead.
And Sean, a big difference for Berkman this year has come from this side of the plate, the right-handed side. Last year, just 171 right-handed. So far this year, 300 with a 700 slugging percentage. In fact, I talked to him a bunch before the game, and he talked about canning the right-handed swing altogether and just becoming a left-handed hitter. And if you know Lance and you know the sense of humor, he said, I just had to let my right-handed side know that. Then it corrected. He corrected himself.
Check swing at a high pitch. It was not a swing, said Wally Bell, the first base umpire.
You know, when you think about it, I mean, Lance Berkman was actually a better free agent sign than Cliff Lee up to this point.
Well, he did the unthinkable and walked back-to-back hitters. That loads the bases. Theriot will slide over to third, Holliday to second, and now Berkman is aboard at first base. Remarkably, it's Lee who's thrown a lot of pitches in this inning, and more of them have been balls than strikes. 20 pitches from Lee.
And the reason for Albert Pujols playing third base tonight is stepping into the batter's box right now. Tony La Russa wanted the bat of Alan Craig in here to protect Lance Berkman. This is the situation La Russa was hoping for.
He was going to play Alan Craig tonight regardless of having played second base, and then he just didn't feel comfortable with Craig at second base defensively. He has very little experience there, ordinarily an outfielder. And decided he wanted him in the lineup but didn't want him at second base, so he has him in right field. Made the decision to move Berkman into first base and move Pujols over to third. Daniel Scalzo will play tomorrow. And they have a right-handed starter on the mound. The Phillies' Roy Oswalt will be coming back from injury.
Back-to-back straight changeups, trying to take the aggressiveness out of the youngster. Followed up with that high fastball, possibly.
Fastball up and in. One of the reasons they're scoring a lot of runs, this Cardinal team has done a terrific job getting runners in with 2 outs. They have 95 2-out runs batted in, the most in the majors, and almost half their runs have come in with 2 outs. Saw Mark McGwire, the hitting coach. A little bit high again. 2-2 on Alan Craig.
And those 2-out RBIs are such a pick-me-up for the offense, and really.
It's a fly ball up into the bright sunshine and right, and Ben Francisco makes the catch. St. Louis leaves the bases loaded. No score after 1. Coverage of Major League Baseball continues on ESPN Sunday night as interleague play begins at 8 Eastern time. Starlin Castro and the Cubs in Boston to take on Adrian Gonzalez and the Red Sox. The first series that the Cubs will have played at Fenway Park since the Red Sox beat them for the 1918 World Series Championship.
Wow.
Major League Baseball on ESPN Sunday night. Of course, baseball tonight from Fenway Park at 7 o'clock.
How tough is that ticket to get?
It was very tough. Matter of fact, the Red Sox sold it, I believe, as part of a premium ticket package. There was so much demand for it. Here's Ryan Howard back in his home of St. Louis. Lafayette High School graduate, leading the majors in runs batted in this year, and he's over the years fared very well against the Cardinals, particularly here in St. Louis. So a lot of friends and loved ones.
That brings out the best in you, doesn't it?
372 in his career against the Cardinals. 15 homers in just 38 games against his hometown team. More than an RBI per game. 46 runs batted in for Howard in those 38 games lifetime against St. Louis. Facing Jake Westbrook, who pitched an easy 1-2-3-11 pitch first inning.
And you see him being careful with this pitch here. Very aggressive with the sinker in the first inning. He needs to be careful with that pitch with Howard. We've seen him change speeds now a lot, try and establish the inside part of the plate. If he leaves that sinker down and out over the plate, Ryan Howard will take advantage.
I think the mistake he's making is he's trying to strike people out like he did Jimmy Rollins. He's not a strikeout guy.
No, he's a ground ball pitcher, Jake Westbrook. Year in and year out, he is among the pitchers in Major League Baseball with the highest ground ball ratio. Matter of fact, among Major League Baseball starters since he came over to St. Louis in the middle of last season, he has the highest ground ball percentage. 77% of the time the opponents are hitting it on the ground. That's a good thing.
Normally. But when you think about the Cardinal defense, you might want to become a strikeout guy.
And sometimes it's not just in errors made, and we talked a little while ago about all the errors, but it's also the plays that you don't make that don't necessarily result in an error. Howard walks. They had several of those type of plays yesterday behind Chris Carpenter in their loss in Cincinnati. Plays that could have been made and weren't.
You just kind of look around the field, and really the only guy above average defensively is not on the field. He's behind home plate.
There is Yadier, one of the real weapons defensively in the game of baseball. Really shuts down a running game. Really has the respect of his pitching staff and receives the ball as good as anyone.
John Mayberry Jr. takes a strike. Starting tonight for Shane Victorino, who left Saturday's game for the Phillies with right hamstring soreness. Did not play yesterday. He's still a little sore today, but Charlie Manuel doesn't think it's a serious thing. He's been trying to give Mayberry a little more playing time anyway.
And I think John Mayberry, starting even when Victorino comes back, starting to earn himself some more playing time. Probably start to see him more regularly in right field, especially if he continues to swing the bat the way he has been. A big home run yesterday against the Braves.
Tim Hudson.
Off Tim Hudson down in Atlanta to tie the game, I believe, at the time he hit it. And he's had a lot of quality at bats. Talking to Jimmy Rollins, feels like a guy that's really matured offensively between last year and this year.
Son of a former fine Major League player. 2 balls and 2 strikes. They count on Mayberry Jr. Starting for the 8th time this year. Reached base safely in all 7 of the previous starts. Of course, Ben Francisco has been the main man in right field for them. After Jason Worth departed via free agency, went to the Nationals. There's been some speculation that maybe Mayberry might get some more time in right, as Francisco's been mediocre.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Jason Worth, and that when Jason came over, he was a 4th outfielder. I mean, they'd given up on him playing every day, but he went in and he told Charlie Manuel, "I'm ready. I'm a different player." Charlie said, "Prove it to me." Mayberry may be getting that same opportunity.
Slowly down to Pujols, who will be tested, and he handled that play without incident. They get the lead man Howard, and Mayberry safe on a fielder's choice.
Well, Albert's first test, if you will, secures it, makes sure with 2 hands, and then realizes he's probably not going to be able to turn 2, and instead of rushing into a mistake, just takes his time and makes sure he makes an accurate throw to Punto at second base, and they're able to get the force in plenty of time.
Well, he had a little bit of time getting his hand on that ball in the glove. Did eventually, and even if he fielded it cleanly right away, they weren't going to get 2 anyway. So Mayberry at first for Ben Francisco. Ball 1 low and away. their everyday right fielder, hitting just .222 with 4 homers and 18 runs batted in. And a ball low.
And Westbrook, after really having a breeze in that first inning, the first batter he faced, Howard, kind of got his pitch count up a little bit, trying to throw a lot of off speed. Seemed to have gotten him a little bit out of a rhythm, trying to refine that sinker ball right now, because believe that's what he wants to throw to try and get Francis.
Mayberry is running. The pitch was a ball, and the throw is not in time. Mayberry has the stolen base, his 3rd of the year.
For that to happen, a pitcher has to absolutely forget about there being a base runner anywhere. Look at that. Look at him off and running. Look at it. I mean, you don't do it any better than Molina does. The tag comes down. It still was close. And it was almost like nobody was holding Ryan Howard off. He took off on the first movement from Westbrook.
Look at that. They might have got him. I think he got him. I think he may have got him after that jump you talked about, Rick. Just shows you how good Yadier Molina is to make up that, and a good tag there by Punto.
Well, and just think about Mayberry here. I mean, he got an opportunity to be on. He's out. I mean, there's the tag right there. But trying to impress Charlie Manuel to stay in that lineup.
Little lob in the left, and it falls in front of Holiday for a hit. His throw to the plate is cut off, and Philadelphia leads 1-0 on a base hit by Ben Francisco. So that call at second base then went against Jake Westbrook and the Cardinals really hurts them now.
Well, trying to get that two-seam fastball away, it runs back in and actually I think breaks the bat of Francisco, but because it's up, he's able to get it to the outfield. Mayberry reads it well. He's going all the way, and he's able to score easily. John Mayberry Jr. really trying to kick his way into more playing time and continues to be a spark as we look at Francisco, who has been struggling, gets a big hit here for the Phillies in the second inning.
And I was just thinking that fly ball that ended the bottom of the first inning, that was a difficult play with the sun and the shadows out there right now.
Entire infield is in the shadows now, just parts of center and right field in the sunshine.
A beautiful sight, isn't it? Right downtown here in St. Louis, the arch in the background.
I know the folks here are glad to see the sunshine. They've had some nasty weather in this part of the country. It's impacted the Cardinal attendance. There was an article in the local paper today about how their attendance is down. There are a lot of franchises that would like to be averaging 36,000 plus a night and have their attendance be down, but they're off about 5% from last season at the box office. Nice play by Westbrook. They get Francisco at second base. But they've had a lot of lousy weather, and they think that's the biggest reason that the attendance is down. We know about the tornadoes that have gone through here, a lot of very wet weather.
That's a great point there, Sean. As I was driving in from Kansas City, I saw a lot of blue roofs. Probably 20 miles before the airport and even past that, and you know those are people that lost their roofs. They've got them covered right now. There's a lot of damage that has been done there, people trying to get a lot of things replaced, and probably a big part of the reason that they're not able to get out here. They support this organization as well as any in baseball.
Through 19 games, that average of 36,769 is the lowest since they moved into this park in 2006. They also haven't played a lot of marquee opponents. They got the runner picked off. Westbrook, good move the first to get Pete Orr. And that ends the inning. Phils get a run and they lead 1-0.
Cliff, he's one of these guys that they're very unpredictable.
Every pitch looks the same, but then it does something different at a different speed and different time.
Cliff Lee, he challenges you as well. He doesn't waste any time. He's aggressive, and you know, he has no fear.
When he's on the mound, it looks like he doesn't care who's in the batter's box. All he's doing is playing catch with his catcher.
Cliff Lee, well-traveled, the American League Cy Young Award winner when he was a Cleveland Indian, had that stellar 22-3 year in 08, traded to the Phillies, and had a tremendous postseason, then on to the Mariners, the Rangers, and elected not to re-sign. Many people thought as a free agent he would stay with the Texas Rangers, perhaps go to the Yankees, but elected to return to the Philadelphia Phillies. And when it comes to pitching, the rich got richer when he came back, and he got richer too.
He's going to earn it.
Pitching with the lead for the first time tonight as the Phils got a run in the top of the second. Yadier Molina leads off. 289 for the Cardinal catcher with 3 homers and 17 runs batted in. Nick Punto to follow, and then the pitcher Jake Westbrook. Lee struggled a bit in the first inning. Uncharacteristic control trouble. He walked 2. Threw 25 pitches, but got out of the inning when the Cardinals left the bases loaded.
I think you scared him with what you said about those 2 guys he walked at the beginning of the game, how great they are. You can't get them out right now.
The top 2 hitters in the league. He walked back-to-back, but got out of the inning without allowing a run when he got Alan Craig to fly to right field. And we talk about how rare it is. First back-to-back walks in the first inning. First time he's walked back-to-back batters in any inning since 2006. He strikes out Yadier Molina for his first K of the night. Let's head down to the field and check in again with Tim Kirkjian.
Sean, run support has been a real problem for Cliff Lee this year. This is the first time since April 14th that he can turn around and look at the scoreboard and see a run having been scored for him while he's on the mound. They've scored other runs in other starts since, but in innings in which he's been pinch hit for. But this is really rare for him to look around and see a run being scored for him while he's actually in the game.
He's winless over his last 5 starts since that outing at Washington on April 14th. But in those games, the Phillies have scored a total of 10 runs. Twice they were shut out. Another game they scored only 1 run.
And he's gone at least 6 innings in each of those starts, so he's given them some time to get going.
Orioles and Red Sox beginning a series tonight in Boston. We'll have an update in just a moment from the studio. Red Sox with a win tonight would be above 500 for the first time this year.
Remarkable after that 2-10 start.
They have dominated the Orioles in recent years in Fenway Park. 2-1 to Nick Punto. And a ball high, 3 balls and a strike.
I mean, he is all over the place right now. This is, we're talking about what great command he had. I mean, he on the 1-2 pitch to Alan Craig, he tried to throw it for a strike and he missed up, and you know he was trying to throw a strike there.
Ooh, line drive right back at Lee, who knocks it down and throws him out. And he waves the dugout away, saying, "I'm fine."
How about the composure that you see right here? I mean, we've just seen balls like this undress a lot of people. This is right back at you. He's a 33-year-old guy. I mean, he, to begin with, thought the ball might hit him in the head. He throws his glove up. He turns away to protect himself. And fortunately for him, it looked like that ball hit all glove to begin with. You got to laugh about that. You know it could have been a lot worse.
That was headed for the head right there.
Yeah, might have hit him right in the face.
Very fortunate. But that's one of the strengths of Cliff Lee. You saw it there, his poise, his athleticism.
Did you see how quick he turned away there, though?
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons he was able to react like he was is because mechanically, in his windup and his delivery, he's so sound and able to get on balance.
And strikes out the pitcher Westbrook to end a 1-2-3 inning. ESPN Monday Night Baseball from St. Louis is brought to you by State Farm. Find an agent or get a quote at statefarm.com. And by Volkswagen. Sean McDonough, Aaron Boone, Rick Sutcliffe at Busch Stadium as we go to the third. The Phillies batting against Jake Westbrook with a 1-0 lead. Carlos Ruiz back at the plate. He was there when Pete Orr was picked off to end the second inning. Right back to Westbrook. Not as challenging a chance as Lee had to deal with in the last half inning. One out. We get that studio update. Here's Carl Ravitch.
All right, Sean, thank you. Arby's takes us around the American League East. First, Fenway Park. Dice-K in trouble in the first after taking the ball off his ribs from Brian Roberts. He gives up this wall scraper to Derek Lee. Red Sox had the bases loaded in the bottom of the first, but were unable to score, and Baltimore's got a 2-0 lead in the top of the second. Also in the American League East, the Yankees in Tampa. The former Yankee is Johnny Damon off A.J. Burnett, and that's gone. It's 2-1 now in favor of the Yankees.
The Yankees have lost 5 in a row. They're now 2 games behind Tampa Bay in the American League East. While we were getting the update, Cliff Lee grounded out to the first baseman Berkman with the pitcher covering. And that's an amazing story. We saw Tampa Bay when they were 1-8 at Fenway Park early in the year in Monday Night Baseball.
Longoria was on the disabled list. You thought they were in a lot of trouble. I know I did.
And Manny Ramirez had just mutinied.
And talking with Joe Madden, he says, we're going to be fine. And I said, Skip, you got to explain that to me. He said, we've got 5 guys who are capable of giving us 200 innings.
There's a well-hit ball toward right center field off the bat of Jimmy Rollins, and it'll be a ground rule double. But Rollins is aboard with 2 outs in the third. He's now 1 for 2 tonight.
That's the difference between this ballpark and the Philadelphia Phillies friendly ballpark. That ball is way gone if we are back east, but it's a ground rule double here. Jimmy Rollins gets a lot of that, and the Phillies are hoping to see a lot more of that out of their shortstop.
And sometimes a hitter gets moved in a lineup and it makes him uncomfortable. He just prefers to bat where he's used to batting. But Rollins was welcoming the challenge of being the leadoff hitter, of the number 3 hitter after all the years of being the leadoff hitter. He said, if I can drive in 90 runs as a leadoff hitter, why can't I hit third? And they were hoping it would work out without Chase Utley, but it didn't. So he's back at the top of their batting order.
In a place where throughout his career he has performed a lot better out of that leadoff spot. So keep him there. He brings a lot to the table, and he's actually later in his career now starting to walk more. We know about the speed you see there. You know, he's got about a 30 points higher batting average, much better on base and slugging.
Folks at USC are very proud of that math that you did on the fly there.
Thank you. And then as your team gets healthier and healthier, then you can mix and match and figure out the middle of that order. I think Polanco down in that 3 spot right now makes a lot of sense. The way he's swinging the bat, especially with runners in scoring position. And then who knows, Chase Utley may be back before long, and that changes everything in the middle of that lineup.
Some of the players were telling me that possibly as early as within the next week, maybe when they get back for the next homestand.
Wilson Valdez trying to come through with a clutch hit. Big problem for the Phillies entering tonight's game has been the lack of hits with men in scoring position. They came here 6 for their last 34 with runners in scoring position. That's a 176 average. They did get a clutch hit with a runner in scoring position last inning from Francisco. For the only run of this game. Full count now with 2 outs.
Just kind of thinking about the difference, Sean, between this year and last year. They got a lot of production out of that number 3 spot in their lineup and 5 spot. They're not getting hardly anything this year.
Utley injured, Worth gone as a free agent with a huge contract in Washington. Tonight Ibanez hitting third with Polanco getting just a night of rest. Charlie Manuel said before the game, Polanco last day or two starting to lunge at some pitches, swing at bad balls, and when he starts doing that, it's a sign to Charlie that maybe he just needs a night of rest. Of course, no Shane Victorino tonight with a tight hamstring. On the right side of the infield, and a nice play by Punto. And the Phillies leave a runner in scoring position. They lead 1-0 after 2.5 in St. Louis. ESPN's Monday Night Baseball from St. Louis, one of the great baseball cities in America. Cliff Lee and the Phillies with a 1-0 lead in the first game of a 2-game series. They played each other 9 times this season. Last year, each team in this rivalry won 3 of their 4 home games.
It's been a while since the Cardinals won a series against the Phillies. 2001.
Top of the St. Louis order up there against Cliff Lee to begin the third. Ryan Theriot, who singled to open up the ball game, was stranded at third base in the first when the Cardinals left the bases loaded. The only hit for St. Louis, one trip through their batting order.
Well, we talked about Theriot's struggles defensively so far this year, but not so much at the plate. He's done a very good job at the top of this Cardinal batting order, an order that has been the best in baseball to this point. You see the confidence there of Cliff Lee in a 3-1 spot, willing to throw any pitch, even to the leadoff hitter of an inning.
This is one of those productive at-bats, regardless of what happens here. The long inning that he had. You know, just kind of thinking about the Cardinals' struggles against the Phillies. Everybody struggled against the Phillies since that man, Charlie Manuel, took over. What a run he has had. I've heard people, even in Philadelphia, Sean, talk about it being the best run that the organization has ever had.
Well, if you just go by the start to the last 2 seasons, they're off to historically good starts. They're 25-14 this season. They started 25-15 last year. Theriot walks. It's the first time in 117 years that the Phillies have begun each of back-to-back seasons with at least 25 wins in their first 40 games. So they've been strong out of the gate under Charlie Manuel in his first 6 seasons. They have the best record in the National League. They've won 4 division titles, 2 NL pennants, and the World Championship in 2008. Other than that, he hasn't done anything. So 3 walks from Cliff Lee, which is something you will perhaps not see again this year.
Well, and I too worked on my math this afternoon, Sean. And
with fingers and toes,
shoes off, socks off, the whole shebang. And since the beginning of last year, 36 starts coming into play tonight, Cliff Lee had struck out 249 guys with only 25 walks. And he's walked 3 already tonight, and we're not through 3 innings.
It's the most walks he has issued in a start this season. John Jay hits a double play ball if they can turn it, and they do. 6-4-3, 2 outs, and the base is now empty in the St. Louis third.
Well, and that's one area that Cliff Lee, he hasn't walked a lot of guys, and he hasn't induced a lot of ground ball double plays here. Rollins goes up and gets the friendly hop, gives Pete Orr a great feed at second base, and Orr turns it flawlessly to get the Speedy J down the line by half a step.
That's the first double play grounder induced by Cliff Lee all year. He'd had 37 chances entering tonight's game with a man on first base and less than 2 outs to get the other team to ground into a double play. The most by any major league pitcher who hadn't forced a double play grounder this year. So you never know when you turn on the game what you might see. Not that that was that fascinating, but it is awfully deep in the year not to have at least one double play turn behind you.
Well, I was surprised that he got an opportunity to turn it because I thought the sacrifice bunt worked perfectly for the Cardinals in the first inning. Putting a man into scoring position for Pujols, he hit a rocket that Ibanez ran down in left field. A couple of walks, you had the bases loaded. But Tony La Russa deciding to let the left-handed hitter swing the bat against Cliff Lee.
Just joining us, La Russa back tonight after missing their road trip to Chicago and Cincinnati. Missed 6 games. Joe Patini, the bench coach, ran the club. They went 2-4. Got off to a good start of that trip. Won 2 out of 3 in Chicago. Then they got swept in Cincinnati. Tony says he feels much better, and that's good to hear. He's in a lot of pain battling shingles. Pujols grounds to short. Lee is out of the inning, and the Phils still lead 1-0. The NBA's Western Conference Finals begin on ESPN Tuesday night. Coverage begins at 7:30 Eastern with the Kia NBA Countdown program and the NBA Draft Lottery. And then at 9, Kevin Durant and the Oklahoma City Thunder take on Dirk Nowitzki and the Dallas Mavericks in Game 1. The NBA playoffs on ESPN, home of the Western Conference Finals, Tuesday night. The game's also available online at ESPN3.com, on your phone and in 3D. Jake Westbrook throws the ball to Raul Ibanez as we go to the 4th. The Phillies leading 1-0. I know both of you are big basketball fans. Do you have a prediction in that series, Thunder and Mavericks?
I've got to go with my boy Sir Charles, and he said that the Mavericks are going to have an easy way with it.
Well, I'm taking the Thunder.
Oh, really?
It's Kevin Durant and Mr. Westbrook's time.
I was just in Oklahoma City over the weekend. They're pretty excited down there.
As they should be. That is a fun young team to watch. Pujols catches the Ibanez pop-up. Then we send you back for a Baseball Tonight update with Carl Ravitch.
All right, Sean, as Ryan Howard steps up, we step back to Tampa, where the home run hitter chasing Bautista, but moving one closer. Curtis Granderson goes into the seats in right. Tonight on Baseball Tonight, Bobby Valentine will break down both their swings. That's coming up after the game.
Jose Bautista had 3 homers yesterday for the Toronto Blue Jays. And Granderson is right there on his heels in the race for the American League home run lead. 14 home runs already for Granderson.
And Sean, think about what he's done the last 2 nights. He hit a home run off John Lester and now David Price. Left-handed hitters don't do that.
Bautista has 16 homers, 2 ahead of Granderson.
I mean, that Bautista is can't-miss TV right now. I mean, you watch him step up to the plate, I'm stopping and watching.
This guy's fun to watch, too. Ryan Howard.
And we see Westbrook continuing to attack him off speed and then trying to go inside with that fastball. We take a look here at our K-zone by 3 Olives. Here we see that fastball starting it at him, trying to bring it back on the inside corner. And then hoping to speed him up and then slow him down with that off-speed pitch away. We've seen a lot of off-speed pitches so far to Ryan Howard.
Ryan Howard's got some holes, no question about that. But if you make a mistake, he can keep the ball in the air for a long, long time.
Close pitch, but a ball.
One of the tighter strike zones in all of baseball. A very good one. Very good veteran umpire behind home plate, Jerry Davis. 27 years.
Yeah, 4 times the World Series umpire, including the crew chief of the 2009 World Series.
And that strike zone has not gotten 1 inch bigger in those 27 years.
Wow, that sounded a little bit whiny from a former pitcher.
Leave it to a pitcher to
definitely
know it hasn't expanded.
Come on, Jerry, help me out here. Didn't do a bit of good.
Ooh.
Well, Westbrook wanted that.
I've been there.
Well, there was that pitch by Westbrook that we saw him strike out Jimmy Rollins with in the first inning, where he starts it at the hip of the left-hander and tries to run it back over the inside corner. And K-Zone says Jerry Davis got it right, as it didn't quite.
I didn't say
get
you would
all the way
I just
back.
said that I wanted it.
You're right. And I think Jake Westbrook wanted it as well.
So one out base runner for the Phillies, and John Mabry Jr. scored the only run of this ball game. Is at the plate. He reached on the fielder's choice in the first, stole second on a very close play. Looks like the Phillies caught a break on that call at second base by Greg Gibson. And then he scored on a bloop single by Ben Francisco.
Talking to Charlie Manuel and talking about John Mayberry Jr. You know, said similar to the same way for Ryan Howard, for Shane Victorino, for Jason Worth, all guys that weren't given a starting job, had to earn it and kick their way into the starting lineup. And John Mayberry Jr. starting to earn more at bats, and if he continues to play well, will earn more and more at bats, and his hope would be that he eventually moves into that starting lineup.
Another close one, but a ball. Westbrook might be getting a little frustrated. Chopper foul. And let's go back and look at the stolen base with the use of ESPN Axis. Got an excellent jump. Looked like he was tagged out.
And a great tag by Punto. What I love there about Punto is he straddled the bag. Many times nowadays you'll see fielders take it in front of the bag and try and reach. Punto straddled it and just dropped it.
Fly ball to left. Holiday in to make the catch.
And, you know, we've talked about Yadier Molina and his ability to shut down a running game, but what we've seen already tonight out of the Phillies, and I think it has a lot to do with Jake Westbrook being on the mound, a sinker ball pitcher, a strike thrower, a pitch to contact guy, that they're going to be aggressive and try and get runners moving. We saw Pete Orr get picked off. Obviously, Mayberry left early to try and stay out of those double plays and take advantage of a contact pitcher.
Strike to Ben Francisco as the only RBI in this game with that single to left in the second inning. On the run in right center, John Jay makes the catch. 1-0 Philadelphia in the fourth here in St. Louis.
Sinking fast and in front. It will tie the ball game.
And the Brewers end their 3-game losing streak with an extra inning win at Yankee Stadium. A terrific pitching effort by Phil Humber, and a no-hitter into the seventh inning.
Line to center, a base hit. Throw is not in time. Ball's hit in the air and left. It's off the wall. Relay to the plate. He is safe. And Boston wins.
Well, the Major League Baseball season reaching the quarter pole, about 25% of the way through the season. We've already had some entertaining ball games on ESPN Monday Night Baseball.
We have had some great games, and so far we got another doozy brewing tonight.
Well, you know, Cliff Lee's been everything that we thought as far as shutting down this offense, but he's not been as sharp as we've seen him in the past. And I saw some problems with Westbrook in that last inning. He got 3 guys out before they scored a run, but 3 guys were able to put the ball in the air. Getting away from that ground ball could be an issue.
Well, Lee has walked 3 more than any other start this year. He's given up just 1 hit to the first batter of the night. Matt Holliday drew the first of the 3 walks that came in the first inning. And part of it could be, as you pointed out earlier, Rick, Jerry Davis does have a very tight strike zone.
Well,
pitches like that, for example, might be called strikes by other umpires.
But Cliff knew it when he came into the ball game. You know who's back there. Jerry's been back there for a long time. His zone is not going to change. I'm surprised that Cliff has not adjusted to that.
Well, how do you adjust? Just throw it more down the middle? You don't want to do that
Yes,
either,
you do.
right?
Yes, you do. You don't go side to side. You change speeds. You add a little bit, you subtract a little bit, using more so the heart of the plate when you've got an umpire like this. And I'll be honest with you, Sean, coming into Fenway, which you know better than any of us, when you got Yaz up there and Rice and some of those other guys and the crowd gets loud, you got a young umpire back there, the corners don't exist. They're not there. You've got to make those guys swing the bat, and that's the route a lot of times as a young pitcher you have to go.
Did that sound like more pitcher whining again? So when you went into Fenway and faced those guys you mentioned,
yeah,
or I'm sure other hostile Yankee Stadium, perhaps,
same thing, sure,
you didn't get the calls. You knew going in you weren't going to get the calls.
But I knew later on at Wrigley,
I would get them when you were a Cub.
I'm telling you, it's the truth. It exists more so back then than
yes, yes,
a lot more,
because Questek and the umpires are graded each night. That has gone away a little bit over the last 10 years or so. Even when I first broke in the late 90s, that still existed. The veteran got the benefit of the call, or a game was out of hand.
Wow.
The strike zone got opened up, but not as much anymore.
Yeah, Cliff Lee is obviously displeased with Jerry Davis.
He's not making that adjustment, and he's been fortunate up to this point that it has not hurt him. That ball is off the inside corner with a lot of people. Granted, that's strike 3, and Matt Holliday is going to sit down, but it is not a strike with Jerry Davis. It hasn't been for 27 years, and more frustration there on the part of Cliff. And also Carlos Ruiz. I mean, he slammed his glove down on the ground like, you've got to be kidding me.
But the Three Olives K-zone does not lie. Jerry Davis had the right call. The pitch was inside. 4 walks in 3+ innings. First time he's walked 4 in a game since 2009. Came into the night with 7 walks allowed all season long.
Well, rarely will you see Cliff Lee get that animated, react as he did to that ball 4 call. And what you've got to guard against now is letting that compound. You've thrown two balls now to Berkman to start this hitter. You wonder if that's had a little carryover effect, and that's usually something that Cliff Lee is so good at, controlling the moment, staying within each pitch.
He walked Berkman his first time up. 2-1 the count on Lance this time around. We talk about the amazing strikeout to walk ratio for Lee. Entering tonight, he had struck out 64 batters for the season with only 7 walks. Since 1900, only 2 other pitchers had that many strikeouts and so few walks through their first 8 starts of a season. Only 2 others since 1900. Curt Schilling for the 2001 Diamondbacks, 66 strikeouts, 7 walks through 8 starts, and Johan Santana for the 05 Twins, 67 and 6. Berkman down the line, foul. And he's also used to getting the calls because of those 64 strikeouts, 31 of them had been called third strikes. That's the highest percentage of any pitcher in the National League getting called strike 3s, over 48%.
And it really is amazing when you think about it. Like Rick talked about in the open, it's not overwhelming stuff with any of those pitches, but to get that many called third strikes really shows you the deception that he possesses.
My goodness. He walked Holliday and Berkman consecutively in the first inning. He's done it again to begin the 4th. Rich Doobie, the Philadelphia Phillies pitching coach is on his way to the mound.
Well, Sean, I thought for a second there he was starting to figure it out. After he fell behind an account 2-0. Watch this here. There's a changeup with a swing and a miss. There's a fastball at 92. More so in the heart of the plate. But what happens? All of a sudden now he throws the cutter down. He misses. He threw the cutter in and missed. Then the high fastball up and away. A nice look there from our sponsors and the nice people at 3 Olives there. But why didn't he just come back with another changeup in the heart of the zone? He's still trying to paint, and that is not going to work tonight.
Well, he's tied his career high, and it's taken just 3+ innings to do it. 5 walks. Last time that happened was in 06. So 2 Cardinals aboard for Allen Craig. He batted with the bases loaded in the first inning and 2 outs and fly to right to end the inning. 1 strike on Craig.
Craig now with a long look at third base coach Jose Oquendo. Possibly putting on that sacrifice bunt after the first strike.
And I think at this point in the order, they want Craig swinging the bat. He's in there to swing the bat. You start putting yourself into a box at the bottom of that order, you get a base open where you have the pitcher coming up. You want Craig to do some damage.
Swing and a miss. He strikes out on 3 pitches.
That's the best breaking ball that we've seen tonight. Painted the inside corner with 2 fastballs. Knew the young man was not going to go up there and take 3 consecutive strikes. Got him to expand the zone with that good over-the-top curveball. See that bat well out in front and just slightly above it to get the first out. Now you start thinking ground ball double play if you're on the mound.
And it's bounced into the hole by Molina. And no play. Rollins got it in the hole, but could not make a play. So the bases are loaded for St. Louis.
Well, he got that ground ball he was looking for, Rick, but Molina puts it perfectly in that hole. Such a slow developing play that Jimmy Rollins has no play anywhere. And this is a situation where you really want to manage your emotions if you're Cliff Lee. You're having an uncharacteristic game. You're struggling with your command a little bit. You're a little frustrated with the home plate umpire. But now you're at the bottom of the order in a bases loaded situation with a 1-run lead. This is all about controlling your emotions right now and executing a pitch knowing that you've got the 8-hole hitter and the pitcher Westbrook on deck.
Vic Punto took a strike. Punto was a part of their rally in the 9th inning that fell just short yesterday at a 2-run double in the 9th inning in Cincinnati. And he's in the hole here, 0-2. That infield hit by Molina, just the 2nd hit for St. Louis. Each team now with 2 hits.
Thing you have to love about Cliff Lee, though, even though he's in trouble, the pace of the game continues. He just makes you think, regardless of whether he's is or not confidence.
And Rick, as an infielder, I'm sure for an outfielder as well, when you have a pitcher that's working fast, which this entire staff does, led by Roy Halladay, it keeps the defense on your toes. It keeps you involved in the game. And as much as you hear that cliche all the time, it really does make a difference defensively when you're playing behind a strike thrower and a guy working fast.
Outside. Two and 2 on Punto, with the pitcher Westbrook to bat next. No issues now for pitcher, batter, fielders with the sunshine. The entire field in the shadows. Sinking fast and right and in for a hit for Punto. Runners had to hesitate to see if the ball would be caught. And Halladay just did barely beat the throw to the plate by Ben Francisco to tie the game at 1.
Well, what a really nice job of hitting here by Nick Punto. Cliff Lee, I think, actually executed the pitch he wanted to. A fastball in on the hands. Punto does a good job of thinking the other way so he could be in position to handle an off-speed pitch. He gets the barrel of the bat to the ball and just dumps it into right field for an RBI. And we almost had ourselves a force out, something you don't see very often, as Holiday just does beat the throw home, as he had to hold, thinking it might be a tag situation, but
looked like he might have tweaked his left knee reaching for home plate there.
Where's Westbrook, who's not an automatic out? He's had 2 hits this year. Struck out his first time up tonight. Now 2 for 15 for the season.
You have to be thinking suicide squeeze at some point in this at bat if you're Cliff Lee. And you know what? I might be thinking it right now.
He wants to throw a strike here. Doesn't want to go to 3-0 with the pitcher, so perhaps a good pitch to bunt. Is that the way you're thinking?
I think it's a real good pitch to bunt if he wants to.
well, he was showing bunt right there early on.
Somebody missed something there.
Yeah, and you saw Westbrook giving a long stare down at him. Maybe he got the sign, maybe he didn't, but you know, Tony La Russa with his pitchers does a lot of that. Show bunt early, pull back, hit, bunt. You can do a lot of things off of showing it early. And the Cardinal
perhaps
pitchers.
Tony wanted to be more of a surprise than it turned out to be.
After looking at that swing and thinking back to his first at bat when he struck out looking bad, I'm definitely thinking squeeze on this pitch. I would have thought take on that 2-0 pitch.
So you think they intended on the previous pitch to suicide squeeze there and Westbrook just messed it up?
I think it was on to begin with.
As Jose Oquendo just had the look of a guy who, I'm going to give you the signs again and maybe this time you'll get it right.
Yep.
Well, you can't put it on now.
As a pitcher, how much did you pay attention to the signs as a hitter from the third base coach?
Not at all. You just thought of the situation.
Did you know them? Were there times?
Oh no, when I was up there hitting. You mean I thought you mean when I was on the mound. I knew every one of them. And would hope for that squeeze sign, because to me you're just giving me a run right there, particularly in a spot like this where it would give me the lead. Tony will not be happy if that is indeed the case, that Westbrook missed a sign.
Bases loaded, 1 out, 2-2 pitch. We'll give Westbrook credit. He is battling here.
And that is Cliff Lee's 82nd pitch. So and we're just 1 out in the bottom of the 4th inning. So at any rate, it'd be hard to imagine Cliff Lee going more than 5, maybe 6 innings in this game.
7th pitch to Westbrook is ball 3. So the count is full as Lee pitches to the St. Louis pitcher with the bases loaded. Strike 3 right down the middle. Westbrook hoping that Lee had one more bout with wildness, but it was not to be.
It really was a pretty good battle there by Westbrook. But it's just hard to understand as a pitcher, and having been in that situation, if ever you're going to go deep, it's going to be at a time when you know what's coming. And you knew right there at 3-2 it was going to be a fastball, and he was going to try to throw it right down the middle, not wanting to walk you. And yet Jake could not pull the trigger.
You know what, though, Rick? He took that pitch like he didn't want to not swing at a strike and really mess things up. With as much as Cliff is on the ropes right now, man, he would have loved to have had a walk, but he took it like, I don't want to swing at a bad pitch here.
Well, now you go
and
back
now
to
he couldn't pull the trigger.
That 2-0 pitch where he might have missed a sign.
Ryan Theriot, a sinking line drive and right and in for another hit. It'll score 1 run, and the Cardinals lead. Now the throw to the plate gets away from Ruiz, backed up by Lee, and out at home plate is Yadier Molina. And Ruiz wants to make sure he's all right after a catcher-and-catcher collision there. Molina comes up limping, favoring his right leg. The Cardinals get 2 in the inning, and they lead 2-1. We're back in St. Louis, where the Cardinals have just taken the lead with 2 runs in the bottom of the 4th. It was very nearly 3 runs, but a nice play by Cliff Lee here.
Well, Francisco does a good job on the in-between hop, but then makes a terrible throw to home plate. But just the athleticism, the poise of Cliff Lee to be backing up, to calm himself and make an accurate throw to Carlos Ruiz really is why, part of the reason Cliff Lee is the complete package.
He had more command of that throw than he has anything else tonight so far.
So Jake Westbrook's pitching with the lead for the first time tonight, facing Pete Orr, utility infielder, getting a start tonight. He got jammed and broke his bat at a weak grounder to Punto for the out. There were a lot of strange things in that last half inning with Cliff Lee out there on the mound. He walked 2 to tie his career high for walks in the game with 5. Both of those walkers scored. Molina had an infield hit, just his 2nd of the year. There was almost a forced play at home on a base hit to right. And you had a runner out at the plate. 1-2. Kind of a wild, zany, wacky inning.
It's kind of being lost, too, is the night of Ryan Theriot. 4 innings, 2 hits on base all 3 times. RBI.
Carlos Ruiz bounces 1 wide of third.
And here's a guy the Philadelphia Phillies are happy to have back in their lineup. Been such a important part of the winning ways in Philadelphia over the last several seasons. Tremendous defensive catcher, tremendous relationship with his pitchers, and has really developed a reputation as being a very clutch hitter. We've seen a lot of big hits over the years and a lot of big postseason moments for Carlos Ruiz.
Pops that one up in the middle of the infield. Punto the catch. Cliff Lee to hit next. Here's Tim Kirkjian.
Sean, I talked to Brian Schneider, one of the Phillies catchers, before the game about Cliff Lee, and he said he is amazing. I put the mitt down. He throws it exactly where I want it every single time. He said he's remarkable. He said the only time he ever gets in trouble is when he works too fast. He gets in a little bit of trouble and he hastens the pace a little, and the catcher has to go out there and say, okay, slow it down a bit, and he can do that too.
Yeah, he can hit. Base hit into center field. Aaron, we were talking this morning. You played with both. You were a teammate of both Cliff Lee and Jake Westbrook, and you believe one of the reasons he surprised many by choosing to go to Philadelphia is he likes to hit. So if you're looking for tiebreakers, the possibility of hitting was appealing to Lee.
Sean, no question about it. I think it was part of the equation. I think he loved his time in Philadelphia when he got traded over there, was part of a great postseason run, came up short. But I think the idea of hitting and being more involved in the game offensively in the National League was something that absolutely appealed to Cliff Lee, and something he told me so in the days right after signing with Philadelphia.
I think right along with that, the Phillies won the National League East by 6 games without him. And the Atlanta Braves finished second. They lose Bobby Cox and Billy Wagner. That all had to be appealing.
Of course, there's always family considerations. His wife apparently had a great experience living in Philadelphia. They like being in the downtown area and walking around. Easy access to some great restaurants. Rollins a base hit. Lee jams the brakes on, very nearly slipped as he rounded second and put the brakes on. Rollins has 2 hits, and we send it back to Carl Ravitch.
Saucony brings us this next update, Cincinnati, and watch Scott Rowland at third base here. Bob, the catch and the errant throw, and Actually, his throw is the one-hop throw that should be caught. It just came up high after hitting the lip of the grass. And on 1st and 3rd here, Jay Bruce tested a couple of times, has that one go underneath them. And the Chicago Cubs lead Dusty Baker's Reds 2-0.
Reds with a game-and-a-half lead over these Cardinals right now in the National League Central. Philadelphia with a chance to tie it up or reclaim the lead here. With 2 men on and 2 outs, Westbrook retired the first 2 batters of this inning easily. Then Lee singled, Rollins singled, and now Wilson Valdez is up there with 1 strike.
Tell you what I love watching here. You talked about it, Aaron. Cliff Lee wanting to swing the bat, get back to the National League. How about him running the bases right now? He thought about going from 1st to 3rd on the base hit by Rollins, and now he's getting that nice secondary lead. He's getting off in plenty of room just in case there's a base hit. He might be able to score and tie the game up.
I think what some people would be surprised to know is that Cliff Lee is one of the fastest guys on the team. He's a very good athlete, and you see him, he looks very skinny on the field, but a very strong person.
Broken bat down to Pujols. He'll make the play unassisted. And that ends the inning. The Phils threaten but do not score. It's still 2-1 St. Louis. Back in St. Louis for ESPN Monday Night Baseball, the Cardinals and the Phillies. And the Cards lead 2-1. So they get ready to come up against Cliff Lee. Had a very interesting night so far tonight, including a career high tying 5 walks. Facing John Jay. 1 out.
That is what you call getting jammed right there. That is a fastball, lefty on lefty, in on the hands.
Just a little flutter ball down to 3rd off the bat of Jay, who's now 0 for 2 with the sacrifice. And here's Albert Pujols, who has lined to left. Well struck ball back in the 1st. And then he's grounded to short. It's hard to think of another really well hit ball tonight against Cliff Lee. When they have the 4 singles, really none of them particularly well hit. I guess the line drive back to the mound that Lee caught was a well hit ball. That was hit hard again. Rollins throws him out. Pujols 0 for 3 and now 0 for 7 in his last 2 games.
We talked about all of the walks on the part of Cliff Lee. Not only has he missed up in the zone, but when he's tried to get some help and get home plate umpire Jerry Davis to expand the zone, well, the veteran umpire has just not gone with him. K-zone proves that Jerry Davis once again is exactly right, but Cliff Lee has just not made that adjustment yet on trying to add with the fastball and subtract with the changeup. You can still get people out, but he's got to do it in the zone tonight.
2 very quick outs. He could use a low pitch inning. He's up to 89 here in the 5th. And he misses inside to Holiday, who's walked twice. He drew the leadoff walk last inning. Scored the first of the 2 St. Louis runs.
You're right, Sean. If he does not have a quick inning here, this could very well be his last inning. As it is, if he has a quick one, this gives him a chance to get himself not only through this inning, but possibly through the 6th and maybe into the 7th.
You know what? You know that too as a pitcher, Aaron. And I'm just thinking right here in this spot with him missing up with that fastball once again tonight. If I'm Matt Holliday, if I'm going to go deep tonight, this might be it.
Say there was an umpire back behind home plate tonight who had a very wide strike zone, was known for that. Yeah. How many fewer walks do you think Lee would have thrown tonight?
He might have a career high in punch outs.
So many of these pitches have been so close. Jerry Davis has been very consistent. High throw, but a nice play made by Howard to rescue Wilson Valdez. Starting to get a little bit chilly here in St. Louis. ESPN Monday Night Baseball is brought to you by Scotts, the official lawn care company of Major League Baseball. And by Dos Equis. Stay thirsty, my friends. Please enjoy Dos Equis responsibly. Jake Westbrook delivers ball 1 low to Raul Ibanez. It's the top of the 6th here in St. Louis. Cardinals leading the Phillies 2-1. Good start for Westbrook. Came in with an ERA of nearly 7. Had a couple of particularly bad outings that really drove that ERA up. He's certainly much better than the statistics would demonstrate.
And one of them was the last outing when he was in Chicago, our Wednesday night game. But that came after a 53-minute rain delay. The 3 starts before that, he had pitched really well. One of those that you were talking about, Sean. But after the rain delay, you kind of suspected that, you know, being out for an hour, a 33-year-old might have trouble.
Line down the left field line, foul.
And guys, Jake Westbrook has been one of the more underrated pitchers during the course of his career. I got the opportunity to play behind him for a couple of seasons, and no one that I played behind garnered more comments when the people would come around to third base saying, this dude is nasty, like Jake Westbrook, and that nasty sinker he's thrown throughout his career. He's really developed a cut fastball that helps him with left-handed hitters.
Ibanez to shallow center. John Jay is there. 1 out. Well, there's a look at the 2006 Cleveland Indians media guide. And Aaron Boone, teammate of both the starting pitchers we have in the ball game here tonight, Cliff Lee and Jake Westbrook.
How were they as teammates?
They were awesome. Both really competitive guys. Very different personalities, but both highly competitive between the lines. Both really field their positions really well, athletic. And what you love about them, and I played with them in Cleveland when they were both really good pitchers, is they worked fast and they threw strikes, which as a defender kept you on your toes, kept you in the game. Accountable guys. A lot of fun to play behind.
I'll tell you what, I remember Westbrook in 07 in the American League Championship Series. Beat Boston in Game 3 and then threw well in Game 7 at Fenway. Left after 6 innings, down 3-2. The bullpen gave it up after that, but he pitched well.
Back-to-back 15-win seasons for Cleveland in 05 and 06. He's a teammate of Aaron Boone. 3-0 on Ryan Howard. He walks on 4 pitches. Let's get a studio update. Here's Carl Ravitch.
All right, Sean, Saucony back to Tampa Bay, where all of a sudden a huge lead for the Yankees is wiped out, and so's A.J. Burnett out of the game. B.J. Upton 6th gives Tampa Bay a 6-5 lead. More in the Rays from Buster Olney coming up on Baseball Tonight, and their poor attendance this season. Meantime, in Boston, not an attendance issue, but a dice K problem. Orioles 3, Boston nothing. Chris Tillman pitching well.
We mentioned earlier, and you saw it there on the graphic, the Orioles have had a very tough time in recent years at Fenway. 11-34. John Mayberry Jr. took a ball low. He reached on a fielder's choice, stole second, and scored the Philadelphia run in the 2nd inning. Came in on a base hit by Ben Francisco. So Howard has walked all 3 times. But he's gone to the plate tonight. Holiday, the cleanup hitter for St. Louis, has walked twice. So these 2 pitchers being particularly careful with the 2 cleanup hitters. They've had 6 plate appearances between the 2 of them, have walked 5 times.
And we saw that 3-0 pitch to Howard, another off-speed pitch on 3-0 with nobody out. Clearly they're saying Ryan Howard will not beat us.
And they're also saying that John Mayberry Jr. cannot beat us.
Well, at least they'll take their chances.
That's what they're confident in. You go back to that bottom of the 4th inning, though, when Cliff Lee walked Holliday and Berkman. Both of those guys came around to score. The 3 walks for Ryan Howard. He hasn't touched home yet.
3-0 again for Westbrook with the next hitter Mayberry, and he threw him a strike. Despite the fact the Phillies have been a mediocre at best offensive team so far this year, they're still 25-14 for the season. I guess the question I would have is, if they hit like this the entire year, is the pitching good enough? Are they going to just continue to win at this kind of rate?
I think it is good enough because the run prevention goes right along with the pitching. They play much better defense than they get credit for.
Well, and couple that with the fact that Chase Utley might come back, and that changes your team. But even if he were to not come back, you would think at some point, if the offense continues to be an issue, that you can address that through the trade market come the trade deadline, or even into August when guys have to clear waivers.
Chopped on the left side to Pujols, to Punto on the first, and a double play. Good stretch by Berkman.
The gateway to the West says St. Louis to tourists, and to those who'd rather stay home, preferably on the couch, this city means beer. But the people who live here know better. This town is about baseball.
It is one of the great baseball towns in America. Night air getting a little bit chilly, not far from the Gateway Arch. The folks are ready for it. 62 at game time, but now the sun's gone. It's a lot cooler than that. A little bit of a breeze as well. And the temperature might plunge into the high 30s here in the St. Louis area tonight. Sooner or later, the weather's going to get better around this country.
And it will get really hot here in St. Louis before long. It's one of the hotter places as a player that you'll come and play.
Lance Berkman, a big swing and a little foul ball over by the St. Louis dugout.
You know, just kind of thinking about this beautiful ballpark and the setting and all. This place got off to a great start. It opened in April of 2006. Our own ESPN's Mark Mulder picked up the victory in opening day here. And then, of course, later that year, they finished the World Series with a championship in their first year.
Cliff Lee's 1-1 to Berkman. Bounces past the catcher Ruiz. I'm also going to make the prediction this will again soon become a very happy football town. With Steve Spagnuolo now coaching the Rams, one of the bright young coaches in football, and Sam Bradford at quarterback. They've done a nice job building back the talent level. We get the sense they're about to reemerge as a force in the NFL.
They definitely look like they got it right with Sam Bradford. He looks like a budding stud of a signal caller for the Rams. Like how I called him a signal caller?
I did.
That was
Your
nice.
grasp of the football jargon is impressive. I think I called my friend Steve Spagnuolo young. I believe he's older than me, so he's not that young.
Well, you're not that young.
That's what I mean.
Oh.
It's all
I had a
about
birthday
being good.
Friday, by the way. I'm sure you guys both have a present for me after the game that has eluded my grasp so far. Francisco the catch in right. Berkman retired, one out. These two guys are lucky, and there are two other lucky guys who are watching every baseball game during 2011, sharing their experiences with fans throughout their entire season-long adventure. Check in with them at the MLB Fan Cave, MLBFancave.com. You'll see the latest. Check out their Fan Cave Trends video for the latest trends on and off the field. Alan Craig, the batter. Knee-high strike. He's 0 for 2. He's had a frustrating night. He's come up to the plate with a total of 5 men on base in 2 plate appearances and hasn't advanced any of them. Lifts a fly ball to left center, and Mayberry Jr. has it. 102 pitches now for Lee.
You know, they really haven't been stressful pitches. It's not like he's been under a lot of pressure. He just hasn't been able to find the strike zone.
Yadier Molina takes the ball low.
Cliff Lee's spot is due up 4th in the top of the 7th inning. I'm sure Charlie Manuel would hit for him if it came up, but they go 1, 2, 3. I think he'll be back out.
Season high in pitches is 117. He's 13 away from that number. Chopped by Molina down to third. Valdez throws him out. Will they start scoring some runs for Cliff Lee? That's the question as we go to the 7th. MLB.tv, it's baseball everywhere. You can watch more than 100 live out-of-market games every week online and on your favorite devices. You can do it by visiting MLB.tv for details. Jake Westbrook, an excellent outing. Now just 1 run through 6. He's pitching with a 2-1 lead as he threw strike 1 to Ben Francisco. There is action in the St. Louis bullpen. Eduardo Sanchez warming up. Nice play by the third baseman, Albert Pujols. Has played an inning and a third of third base since 2002, but he's handled everything flawlessly over there tonight.
Well, a fine double play turned by Pujols to end last inning. Now a hot shot from Francisco to Pujols' left. He goes down and to a knee, to a dive to make it a little easier on himself. Gets up and throws a strike to first. So,
you know what? All things considered, the guys at baseball tonight have got to consider that as a web gem. We were out on the field when he was told he was playing third tonight. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of notice that went into this.
Well, he might have had an inkling before a lot of other people because he was out there taking ground balls. We were standing over there talking to Lance Berkman when Tony La Russa walked over and said, "You're playing first tonight." And Berkman had a confused look on his face. He thought perhaps that Pujols was hurt. And Tony said, "No, Pujols is playing third."
You know what? GM John Mozeliak before the ball game was telling me that a week ago Albert volunteered to go over there and play if he thought it would help. They just didn't want to take that chance without having Tony as the manager to keep an eye on.
Well, he said that as well before the game. Tony La Russa said says a lot about the kind of guy Albert is. Tony said tonight it made some sense against a tough lefty by moving these pieces around. He got another right-handed bat on the field. And he doesn't feel he's really hurt their defense significantly because Pujols can do it, has done it in the past, and is a terrific athlete. Or on the fly ball to left, the Holiday is out. And here's Tim.
Sean, tonight Albert Pujols volunteered to play third base. That was not in the works until Pujols went to La Russa and said, "I can do this." And when La Russa looked at the other changes that he had to make, it made sense. It made them a better defensive team. But it took Albert going to La Russa and saying, "I want to do this."
Tim, you and I talked to Tony about that. Asked him, is this something, if it goes well tonight, you might do regularly while David Freese is out? That's the key here. They have a young player. I know you think Aaron is a terrific third baseman. Tony said maybe not every day, but again, if there's a tough lefty out there on the other team, I want to get another right-handed bat over there. We might do it as long as Freese is out.
Well, and he's showing tonight he's capable of doing it. And the last 2 plays that he made now go a long way in building the confidence for Pujols and saying, okay, I feel comfortable enough. Those are 2 plays that allow you to feel comfortable over there at third. And now it's starting to look like a viable option for them until Freese is back.
Ruiz hit sharply on the ground at Terrio. Low throw handled by Berkman. 1-2-3 inning for Jake Westbrook. 7th inning stretch in St. Louis. Our coverage of this great game continues on ESPN Sunday night as interleague play begins at 8 Eastern time with the Cubs and the Red Sox from Fenway Park. Cubs' first trip there since they battled the Red Sox in the 1918 World Series. Major League Baseball on ESPN Sunday night, beginning with baseball tonight at 7 o'clock from outside historic Fenway Park. Matt Garza and John Lackey, the projected starters right now in that one. Lackey's had a very tough go of it this year for the Red Sox. Nick Punto beginning the home half of the 7th against Cliff Lee. Cardinals trying to build on a 2-1 lead, and Punto has a base hit. So lead man is on here in the 7th. Punto's 2 for 3. Here's Carl Ravitch.
All right, Sean, with Bobby Valentine. What an inning for the Cincinnati Reds, and it's capped off by this shot. It's a blast to right field that goes 8 rows up, and are we wondering if it's a home run? Let's stop at second. Keep going, Johnny. Okay, it's a homer, and he sprinted into the dugout with the Reds now hammering the Cubs 7-4, Sean.
Pitch hitter for the Cardinals, and it's Kyle Loesch, a fellow pitcher, batting for Jake Westbrook, undoubtedly up there to bunt. Originally, Tony La Russa had Tyler Green, an infielder, up there to pinch hit for Jake Westbrook, so he was coming out of the ball game either way, but now they'll use Loesch to bunt. He stabs at it and pops it foul. So Westbrook's night is over after a very strong 7 innings, but he was up to 109 pitches. One of the things these teams have in common too, some bullpen questions.
Oh, yeah.
Part of it due to injury, part of it due to just lack of performance from guys from whom they expected more.
Yeah, really more so for St. Louis, I think, than that of Philadelphia right now.
Pitch boxed a bit by Ruiz, but Punto doesn't try to move up.
I think Philadelphia, although they've lost Lidge and then Contreras, who was closing in the meantime for them, the guys in their place have done a really nice job. Namely, Ryan Madson has been a lights-out closer in his opportunities, 6 for 6 on the year. Antonio Bastardo's really emerged as a late-inning guy.
Bunts foul. Of course, while Tony La Russa was out for 6 games Thursday afternoon at Wrigley Field, that certainly looks like Tony La Russa, doesn't it? I'm sure a lot of people at the ballpark thought it was Tony La Russa, but it was Kyle Loesch dressed in Tony La Russa's uniform. Somebody commented to him, boy, your hair kind of looks a lot like Tony's there in the back. So they encouraged him to do it. He said he really didn't want to, and then they thought, you know, Tony's not here and he's a pretty serious, intense guy. He might not like this. And the other players finally said, no, Tony would love it, and Tony did love it. When we talked to him before the game, he said he was really touched by that gesture. And Loesch gets the job done. Even with the 2 strikes, he got the bunt down. You saw the reaction of the players in the dugout that day when he came back with the lineup card. They thought it was tremendous.
Well, again, guys, I'll tell you, I know funny, and that was pretty funny. What Kyle Loesch did the other day at Wrigley Field. It was quite an imitation, and something that I think got the guys going quite a bit.
When did you discover your knowledge of funny? Were you born with that?
It's been a few years now.
That's something that you cultivated over the years.
It's been a cultivating process.
Well, I know that Rick and I then must not be funny at all, because you haven't laughed at one thing either one of us has said the entire season here at Monday Night Baseball.
Stick with it.
I'm not giving up.
Brian Terrio, as Rick mentioned earlier, has already had a good night at the plate. 2 singles, an RBI, and a walk. And the Cardinals, as we mentioned earlier, huge key of their success this year, the ability to hit with men in scoring position.
I can't remember seeing Cliff Lee continue to struggle with that fastball up and out of the zone like he has tonight.
Throw to second, and Punto is just back ahead of the throw from Carlos Ruiz.
Aggressiveness all the way around, Aaron.
Yeah, Punto trying to get an aggressive secondary lead to get a good jump on a base hit.
And when you get back just by that much, you've pretty much got that lead, have you not?
Absolutely, and Ruiz had a good pitch to handle, a good pitch to throw on. But a good aggressive secondary by Punto.
Here's where I take something off if I'm Cliff Lee in this spot. I'd throw a changeup at 84 or another cut fastball because Theriot obviously wants to drive the ball to the opposite field.
You have to think this is going to be the last inning for Lee. He's 2 pitches away from his season-high pitch count.
Good look at that defense you see in the outfield, shading Theriot to the opposite field.
Michael Stoops has been warming up, and he should be ready to go. Charlie decides to go to the bullpen within this inning. Full count now.
I come right back with that changeup. He threw it 3-1, 85 miles an hour. Take a little bit more off of it than that and try to get Theriot to roll over on something.
Ball 4. That's a career high 6 walks yielded by Cliff Lee.
This is thin ice right here.
And this most certainly Cliff Lee's last batter. Kind of had his way with Jay so far. Been a tough matchup for Jay. But with the right-hander Pujols on deck and Stoots ready in the Philadelphia bullpen.
I'm not sure about that.
I don't know. Lee up at 117
I'm not funny,
pitches.
but I can argue with you.
I'm saying this is his last hitter no matter what happens.
I don't think so.
Okay.
That wasn't funny, was it?
Might have been very insightful, though.
Might have been insightful. We shall see.
I'm looking down into that bullpen, and I had a conversation with the manager one time. He came out and he said, I'm going to take you out. I said, who are you bringing in? Are you kidding me? Who's got a better chance of getting this guy out? And he walked back to the dugout.
I hope that didn't get back to your bullpen mates.
I probably did, but if I'm Cliff Lee, I mean, obviously if he walks this guy or gives up a hit, you're done. But if he gets him out, I stay with Cliff Lee.
I think he's cooked. I think he's settled in here the last couple innings to get to this point, and now we're seeing him be erratic again.
I know you two are the analysts, but can I cast the deciding vote on this?
Sean?
And I like you equally, but I'm going with Aaron Boone on this one.
I said he was on thin ice that started this whole thing. I'm not sure he can get Jay out, but if he does, I stick with him.
Well, we might be a pitch away from finding out. John Jay behind in the count 1-2.
Jay's kind of taking one for the team tonight with Rasmus not able to play. Kobe saying before the game he hopes to be able to go tomorrow.
He's had a muscle strain. That's why you shouldn't lift weights. 1-2 pitch. Fouled away.
You're in the gym every day.
You know,
you were trying to be funny, weren't you?
Well, yeah, and I think it's clearly obvious to America that this body is in the gym every day.
You did not even get a courtesy smile
I
out
went
of
down
Aaron
there just to see today if there was a vending machine I could get a cupcake, a soft drink.
Line in the left center, a base hit. Terrific at bat by Jay. And the Cardinals lead 3-1. Punto across the plate.
That makes it an easy decision there for Charlie Manuel. In fact, he's not going to wait much longer at all. The base on ball is really the key to the problems tonight for Cliff Lee. And as you said, Sean, that's a great at bat. That's a cut fastball off the outside corner, just reaching out, putting the barrel of the bat on the ball, and great hustle all the way around by the Cardinals. We'll never know.
Well, Cliff Lee will be winless over his last 6 starts. Cannot get a win tonight. Back to St. Louis after this. Cardinals lead 3-1. They've driven Cliff Lee out of the ball game here with 1 out in the 7th inning. Lee threw 122 pitches and issued a career high 6 walks. He had walked 7 men for the entire season and had a strikeout to walk ratio of more than 9 strikeouts for every walk this year. Tonight, 6 walks, only 4 strikeouts. Here's the 24-year-old rookie Michael Stutz on in relief, in for his 8th game with Philadelphia. Came up in late April when Jose Contreras went on the DL. And he's been impressive. And he throws the ball to Albert Pujols. Welcome to the major leagues, young man. Get to face Albert Pujols in your 8th big league outing with a couple men on base, trying to keep your team in the game.
Well, the Phillies like Stutz's arm, a good fastball slider combination. Command, the biggest issue for him is you see a good fastball at 93 on the outside part of the plate. And that outside pitch is where Albert struggled so far this year. Just a .227 batting average on pitches away compared to last year, over 400. So normally a deadly hitter when you throw a strike out over the plate. This year it's been a struggle for him.
Check swing.
I don't ever remember, even Albert's rookie year, him being as off balance as many times as I've seen lately.
Yeah, we see no homers now in 78 at bats. Rick, playing in Cincinnati, playing it against this guy for so many years, so many games. It was just so rare that I saw him on a given pitch out in front, look off balance, look different. He's had more of that here in the first month and a half of the season than he has at any time.
One more at bat without a home run would match his longest stretch of his career without a homer. 79 at bats in 2009. 3-1 pitch. Hit on the ground right at the shortstop Rollins. And the Phillies turn 2. Well done by the rookie Stutz. It's Pujols to ground into an inning-ending double play. ESPN Monday Night Baseball from St. Louis is brought to you by McDonald's. I'm loving it. And by Hertz, the gas or the brake. Which one are you? Go to Hertz.com. Sean McDonough, Aaron Boone, Rick Sutcliffe. Here in the gateway to the west, St. Louis, Missouri, on a pleasant night, a little bit cool now. And a new pitcher for St. Louis after 7 strong innings from Jake Westbrook, during which he allowed just 1 run. Here's the 22-year-old rookie from Venezuela, Eduardo Sanchez.
Sanchez came into the ball game in Cincinnati Friday with a 5-4 lead. He gave up the lead there. Joey Votto eventually had a walk-off base hit in that ball game. After that game, he was taking out of the closer's role for St. Louis.
Cardinals have 9 blown saves this year. And Ross Gload, pinch hitting for the pitcher, delivers a base hit on the first pitch thrown by Sanchez. The 9 blown saves, second most in Major League Baseball. Only the Houston Astros with 10. We've seen their bullpen blow more saves.
And Sean, we've talked about the Phillies' offensive woes. One area where they've been really strong this year is pinch hitting. Coming off the bench, that is their 19th hit now in 63 at bats, and Ross Gload, kind of the leader of that pack from the left side.
Well, the tying run is at the plate for Philadelphia here in the 8th. Top of the order, Jimmy Rollins, who's 2 for 3 with a double and a single.
I'll tell you what, Ross Gload is moving up that career pinch hit list. He's one of the best all time.
Now we see a good breaking ball from Sanchez. He features a fastball slider combination, a occasional curveball, and another good arm. And command sometimes the issue, and ultimately what cost him that closer's role.
To second, Punto. Double play. Well, one of the reasons that Tony La Russa put Pujols over at third base is he didn't want Alan Craig to have to play second base. He wanted to take him out of, put him in the outfield, so he put Punto at second base, and that's the move that's paid off for them a few times tonight.
Well, Punto very good defensively wherever you put him, whether it's second, short, or third. He ranges to his left, gets a quick, accurate strike to Theriot, and he had to do it in a hurry with Rollins running down the line, and it looks like they just did beat him. Ooh, what do you think?
3 years ago, it wouldn't even have been close with Jimmy Rollins.
That's the ball. If Alan Craig was the second baseman, they don't turn that double play.
Might not have got to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a knock on Alan.
No, he's a very inexperienced infielder. Tony says he's a good athlete. He has a chance to be a good second baseman with more work at it. But he knew Punto was going to be a good second baseman out there tonight.
Not really surprising. Tony La Russa in his first game back would make a move that might make a difference.
Placido Polanco, who's getting a night of rest from Charlie Manuel up there to pinch hit. He's been the Phillies' best hitter for batting average this year, .340. That's good for fifth in the National League starting today. Tying run no longer at the plate for the Phils after that double play ball, and Polanco strikes out.
Carl Ravitch back at our baseball studios. DirecTV brings us to Atlanta. That's where Hinski's delivering. Chipper Jones going to be out a little while. We'll find out from Buster Olney how long coming up on Baseball Tonight. Atlanta with a 3-2 lead over the Astros.
All right, Carl, thank you. They're having fun here in St. Louis tonight. 34,884 the attendance. They've watched the Cardinals build a 3-1 lead over the Philadelphia Phillies. As we go to the bottom of the eighth, and the new pitcher for the Phils is the veteran lefty, 34 years old, J.C. Romero.
On for the 14th time. A little bit of problem with his command, not as overpowering as he once was.
Last time we saw him pitch on a Monday night game, he hurt his knee and had to go, looked like a knee injury. It actually turned out to be a right calf strain, and he had to go on the DL for a brief stint. Created by Matt Holliday, who was walked twice and grounded to third. Just joining us, Cliff Lee started, went 6 1/3 innings and walked 6, a career high. 2 of those walkers came around to score. Lee threw 122 pitches, a season high. Struck out 4. Only one of them was a called third strike. He had 10 3-ball counts.
And really a tribute to Cliff Lee for as poorly as he pitched by his standards tonight, and as erratic as he was with his command, to get into the 7th inning, only allowing 3 runs to this what's been a potent Cardinal offense. You know, at least he is giving his team a chance late in the game.
Hop up behind the plate. Ruiz all the way back to the screen, doesn't have a play.
Yeah, it certainly could have been a lot worse for the Philly left-hander. Stutz did an outstanding job, that 3-1 slider to get the double play from Pujols. But I just don't think Cliff Lee ever adjusted to the strike zone, or lack of that, with Jerry Davis. On the other hand, Westbrook was aggressive in the strike zone, as Dave Duncan said that he needed to be, and he cut down, Sean, those pitches per inning.
And certainly Lee's control wasn't as pinpoint as it usually is. Chopped to short, and Rollins throws him out. But we talked about as we went along with another home plate umpire, it might not have looked as bad, might not have been as bad as it turned out to be, because there were a lot of very close pitches, The other umpires might have called strikes, and to Jerry Davis's credit, K-zone, every time we looked at a close pitch, back Jerry Davis up.
I guarantee you, Rich Doobie, the pitching coach, said before the game, hey, you know, every pitcher knows who's back there, and you know what you got to work with. And I was just really surprised. Cliffley had a good fastball. He had good stuff tonight, but he wasted a lot of it up and out of the zone or just off the corner.
One out for Lance Berkman, who has walked twice, scored once. He flied to right his last time up. All of his at-bats tonight, plate appearances, were against Cliff Lee.
He looks great, doesn't he?
He really does. The shape he's in, you know, he's kind of been dealing with a knee issue the last year or so. Spent the offseason working really hard, getting his legs back in shape.
Did a lot of running.
Healthy.
Yeah.
And there we see the Puma has made his appearance here in St. Louis. The Puma made famous in Houston, obviously. Now out in Cardinals jersey.
Whoop. Got hit by a pitch.
He's so funny. I mean, he was joking before the ball game that the reason he's so light, he goes, do you know how much I run every night just getting to my position? He said, especially on the road when you're dug. He said, I run further than anybody to get to right field.
Tim?
You know, he's always joking around, Lance Berkman is, about how he can't run, but in the end, he really can run. Tony La Russa was telling me before the game he's an above-average runner, and Berkman finally acknowledged, you know, my times to first are pretty good. He said, I just look so funny running that people don't think I'm very fast, including when he hits a home run. He's got the bobblehead going, as Aaron can tell us very well.
Aaron did a little imitation at our meeting this morning of Lance Berkman's kind of bobblehead running style as he goes around the bases after a home run.
Well, unfortunately, playing in Cincinnati, I saw a lot of that bobblehead come past me at third base after another Lance Berkman home run. It was, you know, something, he sets the bat down real nice and then kind of gives you the Lance Berkman around the base. And first thing when I saw him today, I walked up to him and I walked over to him doing that. And
he loved it.
He loved it.
Well, the crew is very grateful. Our producer, Andy Reichwald, director Doug Holmes, I think they put us on camera hoping that you would have the courage to do that imitation, and we appreciate that you did it very well, in fact. We talk about Lance Berkman's place, 5th all-time in homers among switch hitters. I think a lot of fans around the country wouldn't realize he had hit that many home runs, 388. And Tim Kirkjian posed the question at our meeting this morning, is he a Hall of Famer? I usually just go by your first instinct.
Right.
I said no, but if he can put together 4 or 5 more really productive years, he's going to be a guy who has to be in that conversation. Hits a fly ball to center. Mayberry the catch. And Tim, why don't you make the case? So you mentioned one of his stats, combination of stats that had him in very exclusive company.
Absolutely. If you look at his batting average, his on-base percentage, and his slugging percentage, and you look for other players in baseball history that can match all 3 of those numbers, there are only 14 of them in baseball history. And believe me, all 14 of those guys are either in the Hall of Fame or they're going to the Hall of Fame. The bottom line is this: Lance Berkman has got better numbers and is a better player than people think he is. You really got to look at it very closely.
Yadier Molina grounds one in the hole under the glove of Rollins and into left field. Berkman the second, 2 men on with 2 outs here in the 8th inning.
Taking a page out of the Tony Gwynn 5.5 book. That's the second time that he has found a hole in that area. Not hit real hard, but placed perfectly.
Well, back to Berkman. He has been, in his career, a great player. I think when you get into Hall of Fame discussions, it becomes now about him being able to accumulate numbers and longevity that will ultimately get him there or not.
Nick Punto, the batter. He's already had a good night. 2 singles and 3 trips. Has driven in a run and scored one.
And almost took Cliff Lee's head off on the 1 out he made. A line drive back at Cliff Lee.
Well, we mentioned the Cardinals' success earlier. Nearly half their runs scored with 2 outs this year. Most in the majors, over 45%. Coming into tonight, their team batting average with 2 outs and runners in scoring position, .325. Now there are only 2 other teams that are batting even over .270 in that situation, the Orioles and the Rangers. That's a phenomenal number. And remember when Jimmy Williams used to manage the Red Sox, he talked about really the key to offense is the ability to come up with that clutch 2-out hit.
And it's hard to imagine them staying at a .325 clip in that situation throughout the season. But the 2-out hits, Rick, I know you know this as a pitcher, I mean, can be such a deflating blow to the defense and for the offense, a really momentum builder in the course of a game.
They've got a lot of veteran players, too, in that lineup. When you look at the heart of the order with Pujols, Holiday, and Berkman, Terrio's a proven big league player. He knows how to put the bat on the ball. I remember a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the Twins game, they weren't really talking about Maurer and some of the other guys that were on the disabled list. They talked about how they missed Punto. They missed his energy.
A real glue guy and a guy that can do so many things to help you win baseball games. I mean, whether it be defensively playing all over the field here tonight, we see in a tough RBI situation him throwing a good at bat, working the count. It's these things over the course of a long season that winning teams do. They grind out at bats.
Runners go. Punto with a well-struck ball to center. Caught by Mayberry to end the inning. So we bobble along to the 9th. Here in St. Louis. The Western Conference Finals begin on ESPN Tuesday night. Coverage begins at 7:30 Eastern with Kia NBA Countdown and then the NBA Draft Lottery, including our own Jay Billis on the coverage. And at 9 Eastern, the Thunder and the Mavericks in Game 1. The NBA playoffs and ESPN, your home of the Western Conference Finals Tuesday night. Games also available on ESPN3.com. They've had a lot of trouble closing games, and tonight it's Fernando Salas with an opportunity. He's 3 for 3 in save situations. In to pitch the 9th with a 3-1 lead. And even in the count, 1-1 with Raul Ibanez, who's 0 for 3 tonight. There are some defensive changes behind Salas. Albert Pujols has moved from third to first base. And Daniel Descalso has been playing third regularly in the absence of David Freese, is in to play third, help protect this 2-run lead.
Fernando Salas, the opportunity to close some games now. Fastball, changeup, also a curveball slider. But the Cardinals trying to find that right mix at the back end of their pen. And Salas, who has been very good getting his opportunity.
It's a big out with the big man in the on-deck circle.
Good pitch there. Ibanez strikes out. Now time for our one-a-day men's game-changing moment. Sequence of moments back in the Cardinals' fourth. They were trailing 1-0. Holiday a leadoff walk. Berkman a walk. Base hit by Punto to drive in their first run on a close play at the plate. And then another one of those clutch 2-out hits St. Louis has made a habit of all season long. Ryan Theriot brought in Berkman. Cards added another run in the 7th on an RBI single by John Jay. Here's Ryan Howard. St. Louis native hasn't had a chance to swing the bat tonight for his friends and loved ones who are here. Walked 3 times. All of them against Jake Westbrook. Matter of fact, the only walks Westbrook issued went to Howard. So on a night when he had outstanding control otherwise, you can tell he just wasn't going to throw him a tasty strike.
I think that might have been part of the game plan, Sean, particularly early when it was 1-0, nothing to nothing, a tight game like that. You're not going to let this guy be the difference, particularly with Chase Utley out and all of the offense gone for Philadelphia.
Well, he swings the bat and he hits a rocket to deep center. Jay makes the catch. One A Day Men's encourages you to change your game when it comes to health and wellness. Visit changeyourgame.com to check out their exclusive video from the pros at One A Day Men's. Cardinals hoping they're 1 out away from ending a 3-game losing streak. And if they are, they will hand the Phillies their 3rd straight loss, which would be a season long. They haven't lost more than 2 in a row all year. K-Zone brought to you by 3 Olives Vodka. Fastball from Salas at the outside corner to John Mayberry Jr.
Got that 2-run lead. You need to be aggressive.
Whoa.
And there's a case of Salas feeling that energy from the crowd, probably a little excited, wanting to really cut loose a good fastball.
This is one of the big difference between the 8th inning and the 9th inning is the crowd on their feet as they are here.
Big swing, but just a lazy fly ball to center. Jay has it, and the Cardinals win.
Westbrook with the win, Salas with the save, but I thought the key was Nick Punto tonight.
And the Phillies' offensive struggles continue to be an issue. Who is going to protect Ryan Howard in this order until Chase Utley comes back?
Well, they couldn't score tonight against Westbrook, a pitcher who had an ERA of nearly 7 coming in. 3-1 the final. Westbrook the winner. Salas the save, and Lee now winless in his last 6 starts. Coming up next, Baseball Tonight, presented by Go to Meeting. Now for Rick Sutcliffe, Aaron Boone, and Tim Kirk, and Sean McDonough saying thanks for joining us, and so long from St. Louis. Let's send you to Baseball Tonight. To Carl Ravitch and Bobby Valentine.